It happened in the summer of 1994.
It was about 11 o'clock at night. I was out at the chicken coop.
Carrying a .22 caliber rifle near his Creekside home in Prescott, Arizona, Jason Krause says he had been hunting skunks. He says he heard the vehicle coming down the road.
I saw the lights in the dip, and then all of a sudden, it sounded like gunshots. I thought at that time, this is like a drive-by shooting.
He says he fell to the ground.
I tried to cover up my head, and at that time, accidentally squeezed a round off in the rifle.
The vehicle crashed. The driver, 18-year-old Charles Thurman, had been shot in the head.
At that moment, it hit me. My rifle went off. I must have shot that boy.
And that's the story police and prosecutors went with, except
there's no way we believe that that fatal shot came from Krause's rifle.
A new investigation.
Krause would have had to have been suspended in midair.
And new evidence could prove this man's innocence. 16 years later, Jason Krause is still reliving the day the jury came back with its verdict.
I had been outside with my son, and that's when I told him that I don't think Dad's coming home for dinner.
Guilty of manslaughter.
I think the newspaper said that I sat there with no emotion, and I was in shock. I couldn't fathom this.
Krause served more than 9 years in prison for a crime he now says he didn't commit.
That's where, we've been on the last years trying to show why this doesn't make sense.
This is Ryan Staub, Chris Duarte, Molly Schiffer, and Ryan Riggins, 4 students from Northern Arizona University. They're working on the case in conjunction with the Northern Arizona Innocence Project and the FBI, because a large part of Krause's conviction was based on something called composite bullet lead analysis, or CBLA. It's a forensic technique once used by the FBI to link crime scene bullets to weapons. The problem is the FBI has now discredited this type of evidence.
They've determined essentially that it's junk science.
As a result, the FBI is looking into hundreds of cases where CBLA evidence and testimony was a key factor in getting convictions.
There were a number of security flaws that led to the prison break in Kingman, but we wanted to know, how were inmates even getting access to cell phones behind bars?
We requested and obtained nearly 2 years of documents and discovered about 200 cases where inmates, visitors, and employees were caught with phones inside prisons, including one inmate hoping to make $1,000 by sharing his. Prisoners hid them in peanut butter jars, placed them under their pillows, and smuggled them in soap. Phones turned up in boxes with false bottoms and in the soles of inmates' shoes, and some prisoners found extreme hiding places, burying phones inside their own body cavities. Even a simple Cheeto bag used for smuggling, not by an inmate, but a prison employee. After a night out on the town, not everyone's in shape to drive. That's why these drivers are all lined up.
I've taken cabs several times.
Manuel Mejias always considered a cab a convenient way to get home until his ride took a wrong turn.
I just remember freaking out, panicking, so that's when I dialed 911.
Mejias says a Phoenix taxi driver threatened him with a knife after demanding $50 for a trip he says normally costs no more than $10.
And I asked him why the meter wasn't running, and he said the meter was broken.
A violent encounter may be rare, but the ABC 15 investigators rode undercover more than a dozen times throughout the valley,